Welcome to the first Self-Leadership Days podcast. It's a great pleasure to connect with you today. Thank you for your time and interest in this learning journey. We would also like to thank our community for submitting questions that we will be happy to address today. We believe in responsible leadership and therefore the name of our company, Responsible Leadership AG. Our core product is a conference series called SelfLeadership Days. The seed for this initiative was planted 4 years ago. Our core team consists of 3 equal partners, Simon Berger, Rajesh Ramani, and me, Isabelle Nüssli. The first conference on the topic Holistic Success was staged in November 19 in Switzerland. The second conference on the topic Emotional Resilience was planned for March 20 and got postponed to October. Well, the outbreak of COVID-19 has turned the world upside down. We are currently going through a period of enormous health, economic and social crisis that we never dreamt of experiencing or even witnessing in our life. As we speak, about 3 billion people around the world are asked to stay home. Everything is put to the test. So we decided to launch a podcast series to discuss topics that have become more critical than ever, such as self-leadership and emotional resilience. Before COVID-19, the magnitude of change boosted by globalization had never been experienced before. At the same time, only 10 to 15% of employees were considered engaged, and 50% of employees have left their job at least once to get away from their bosses. So the lack of engagement results in poor quality, lost opportunities, and yes, sometimes even failure of an entire organization. So when we realized this, we began to get a glimpse of something more profound behind the machinations of leadership that no systems of rules or processes can explain. And that something is the human element. Interestingly, while the business world is constructed as a rational system, its practical functions are full of irrational behavior. This was before COVID-19 and has gained momentum and importance since. So, what must global leaders and decision makers of the next generation do to keep leadership responsible, both economically and emotionally? How do we develop tomorrow's leaders so that they can grow successful and responsible businesses that overcome today's fast emerging challenges? Anyone can become a leader, but it starts with self-leadership. This thoughtful approach to human interaction is critical. We will hear more about what it means and how it can be honed in a minute. But before, we are delighted to have Rajesh Ramani with us today. Rajesh is a life transformation mentor and teacher. We will be discussing the topic self-leadership and emotional resilience. Rajesh, welcome.
Thank you, Isabelle. It is a pleasure to launch our first podcast with Self-Leadership Days.
Self-Leadership Days, as the word says, contains the term self-leadership. Self-leadership as a central topic. At first glance, this appears to be a new concept in the business world, but actually, it's not. But one step at a time. Let's first talk about the definition. Rajesh, what is self-leadership?
Self-leadership, Isabelle, is the ability to know, understand ourselves, and from that understanding, build and manage our potentials, knowing our emotions, our beliefs, our behaviors, and our responses to life situations. When we know ourselves, and when we take responsibility for our actions and our beliefs and our views and emotions, we are able to respond effectively and sensibly to the challenges that we face in life. See, in the business world, there's always been a focus on the external. That means resolving problems, finding solutions, managing people. But the education around business is also being focused so much more on understanding the know-how, the technology, the people management, finance, etc. What self-leadership brings is to know and understand the person who is using all these tools. So to give you a metaphor, it is like when you're wearing a specs or a glasses and then you look the whole world through your glasses. If the glasses are dirty or smudged, then the whole view in front of us is smudged. That is why self-leadership is important. To pay attention to our glasses and to know how to clean it, change it, and transform it. So to realize how we respond and perceive the world and how this perception actually affects in the way we understand the world and the way we respond to the world is self-awareness. But when we add self-awareness with our goals and vision and with an inclination towards action, then it becomes self-leadership. Mastering the inner world, the world of our emotions, views, beliefs, helps us to understand the external world better and hence respond to it very well. When we take it in a leadership sense, self-leadership is quite essential when it comes to corporate governance, when it comes to risk management, when it comes to addressing change. So I think, in both a personal life and also in a professional life, cultivating self-leadership is quite essential.
Yes, it's true. In business, it makes us feel good when we can use a common language, especially if we sound rational. Corporate governance, risk management, change, all great and widely used but rationally anchored keywords. But what about the implementation? For example, who ultimately implements change or handles risks? Often we ignore the last mile, people. You mentioned it, Rajesh. Human beings are the center. It starts with the individual. From what we've just learned, what self-leadership means, we conclude that it's not a new concept, is it?
Of course, it is not a new concept. I would say the importance of self-leadership has been understated in the business world and the way we understand business itself. See, transformation of one's perceptions and behavior and one's actions through an intense introspection of oneself has been a very old concept. It's just that we need to apply this in the right areas for us to become more and more successful in whatever we endeavor in life. And also, most of us are focused, as I said earlier, on the outer world and trying to fix and understand the outer world. But the outer world is seen through our inner world. So it is essential that we understand our inner world and also the outer world, and we act accordingly.
So it seems that we are predominantly focused on one side of the equation, fixing the outer world, as you just said. Many of us are fixers. Give me a problem, I'll find the solution. But let's be honest, we are not used to look inward. And when we do so, it's not comfortable, at least in the beginning. Why do we have such a, let's say, a strange relationship with our inner world?
Self-observation has not been taught to us. Whenever we try looking into ourselves, we either been scared of what we see or we are scared of the questions that come up within us. And also in our society, starting from our childhood, our parents, or in our schools and in our education system, not many of us are taught to look into ourselves. And in many areas, even acknowledging one's emotions are seen as a taboo. And it's as though it is a weakness. So our focus has been driven only into the outer world. And we see problems outside and we have to fix them through our intellect and through our intelligence. But I believe true intelligence flowers only when we have an awareness of our inner world, and also we extend this awareness to our external world. We need to be trained in the skill of self-observation. And self-observation will eventually become self-awareness, and which will help us cultivate self-leadership.
So, just to clarify, self leadership and self development sound similar, but they are not the same. There's a slight distinction. Can you please elaborate on how the two differ?
Yes, Isabel. Self-development, I would put it in the context of learning new skills, new information, knowledge, or even changing one's behavior and approach towards life. But when it comes to self-leadership, it is much more deeper and profound in the sense that we focus on knowing oneself and taking responsibility for what we are and how we function in the world and what propels us from within, our emotions and our belief systems. And so when we look at ourselves from that view, we also bring about a deeper level of transformation, which is possible. So it is not just acquiring information and knowledge, but it is a deeper level transformation through the process of self-awareness.
Self leadership, one might think that self leadership is applicable only to people in top management position. But the good news is no, not only. Rajesh, why is this concept beneficial to employees at all levels? And furthermore, why is it not only important for individuals but for organization as a whole?
Yeah, it is true. It is applicable to people at all levels, in all areas of life. And it is an universal concept that we all need to understand and master. Everyone dons a role of a leader in one area or other of life. Everyone is a leader. Either it could be the roles that we take up, the roles in our team, in a particular project, in our organization, or even roles in your family. And most importantly, everyone leads one's own goals and one's own dream to achieve their potential. So we are leaders in that concept of our own destiny. You know, what I would say is anyone who is willing to transform oneself and help the transformation of people around them or the organization to which they are connected, they are ready for self-leadership. It's not necessarily top management. It's not necessarily when you start working as a leader of a team. At every stage in one's growth in life, self-leadership plays an important role. When you look at an organization itself, organization is a group of individuals coming together to create a common business objective, and this objective brings a pooling of resources, physical, non-physical, mental, emotional, all of them together. So the organization actually is a reflection of the culture, values, and beliefs of the people who comprise it. So self-leadership for an organization is a collective thinking and collective self-observation of how the organization functions, what is its purpose, what are our goals, how do we respond to challenges, how do we understand change, how do we respond to the problems within us as a group. So self-leadership actually, if it is practiced in an organization, creates an atmosphere of self-awareness and an atmosphere and a courage for self-inquiry and, as we discussed earlier, self-management itself.
Yeah, makes sense. We've just discussed how self leadership enormously benefits the work life, and you already shed light a bit on my next question. In what way does it benefit the personal life as well?
See, we cannot separate the personal life from our work life. They are all intermingled and interconnected. So the individual's levels of fulfillment, happiness, and then the quality of our mental and emotional life is important for our performance at the work level. So, and this quality of life improves when we really focus on what are our needs and expectations in our personal life as well. When we speak our personal life, it is in connection with our relationships, the relationships that we create, that form, we being at the core of it. And we identify ourselves only as relationships with somebody or something. When we focus on fulfilling these needs and expectations, our needs and also the needs of people around us, this determines a sense of purpose, brings happiness, and then necessarily improves the quality of our life. And it will reflect in the way we pursue our goals towards success.
Yes, who wouldn't want to have a high level of mental and emotional quality in one's life, right? But let's look at reality. For example, at the dynamic in business. Most managers, and I'm intentionally using the term manager, most managers are super busy, rushing from one meeting to the next, troubleshooting issues as they come up, making sure that targets are met and that productivity is on track. There's no time, supposedly, to check in with oneself. How much time and effort does self-leadership demand?
See, time depends on what we prioritize in life. When we prioritize self-leadership as an essential habit in our life, which actually makes or breaks our success and our fulfillment, then we will find time. We always find time for things that we love, that we really like, that really gives us a particular benefit. So I think, self-leadership is just a new habit to be cultivated. And initially, yes, it requires time, effort, and practice. But slowly, it becomes automatic. The ability to know what is happening in me and how I function in the world will become automatic, and it will become second nature. The excuse that, I'm too busy working that I cannot focus on these aspects is not a good excuse. It doesn't work. It is like saying, going back to our earlier example, it is like saying I'm too busy to clean my glasses and I would rather continue to look at the world with the same dirty glasses. Doesn't sell. It doesn't work.
Yes, I'm, I'm too busy to tie my shoelaces because I need to keep running.
Exactly. Also there is the old story of a woodcutter, whose productivity decreases day by day by day. And then he is so confused about that and he goes to his boss and he says like, I don't know why. The first day I cut 10 trees, now I'm cutting only 4 trees, but I'm working really hard. And then his boss says like, when was the last time you sharpened your axe? In this context, the axe is not a literal axe, but it is our own self. It is our own emotions, views, beliefs, our own self. So that is where self-leadership comes, and that is why it is absolutely important.
So then, what are likely consequences if someone keeps looking at the world with, to use your example, with smudged glasses, or keep running with open shoelaces? Meaning, what are the consequences of neglecting to spend time on self-leadership? Why would someone not take the time? Maybe because we think it can't be measured, but it can, right? How would you describe the measurement of lack of self-leadership?
See, self-leadership is like looking into a mirror. It basically shows yourself. We can't run away from ourselves. Actually, I think it is an opportunity to better oneself. It is an opportunity to look into ourselves, look at the flaws, look at what we actually are, and then transform what we are so that we become better individuals, so that we become better organizations capable of achieving our true potential. The consequences of neglecting self-leadership, I would say the first thing is a lack of clarity. When things go very well, we are all happy and going very well with it. But when things don't go the way we expect them to be, then we lose track of what is happening. And since we don't know how to look into ourselves, we have poor judgment of the world around us. We have poor relationships, then which leads to poor decision making, or we overreact or underreact to challenges in life. And when it is an organization, a group of individuals, then we create a toxic work culture, and employee engagement is really impacted in a bad way, and productivity suffers. When we look at measurement of this, there was a 2017 study, you already touched upon it earlier. About 50% of employees leave their jobs only to get away from their bosses. And that is a big number when we look at it. And then when we say bosses, it is not just the bosses, it is the behavior, the culture, it is the way leadership functions, it is the way organizations function. So that's what it reflects. And also the study that 10 to 15% of employees, or only 10 to 15% of employees fit the definition of an engaged employee. And that's a huge loss in terms of productivity, in terms of focus. And monetarily, if you look at it, the potential losses in productivity they have concluded could be around more than 7 trillion US dollars. I think all of this is connected to leadership issues due to a lack of self-awareness and self-leadership in addressing emotions, behaviors, and our manner of functioning with each other.
Yeah, this statistic is alarming. And even if the percentage of engagement was, let's say, 30%, it just wouldn't be enough. Learning about and overcoming leadership issues, such as the ones you just mentioned, starts with self-leadership. But let's dive a bit deeper and talk about the key component of self-leadership, emotional resilience. The upcoming Self-Leadership Days conference in October puts a focus on building emotional resilience. Almost ironically, this was the core topic of the March conference that we needed to postpone. Ironically, because emotional resilience is vital to navigate the current crisis. But before we move on to why it's so critical, let's start with its definition. What is emotional resilience?
Practicing self-leadership automatically strengthens our emotional resilience because one cannot exist without the other. When we practice self-awareness and through that self-leadership, automatically there is an inner strength that we gain. And then we have a better clarity about ourselves and also the external challenges that we face. And emotional resilience is the way we respond to challenges that we face in life, and particularly emotional challenges. I would also say it is the ability to bounce back from a negative experience. How fast can we bounce back? And also bouncing back by keeping our form and being in this calm, collected place. Is it possible for us to do that? It is not the extreme where people say I should not be touched by anything and I will not experience any emotions. No, it is not that. It is the ability to allow the emotions to flow through you and learn from it and then get clarity at the end of the exercise. That clarity will lead to a productive action. So emotional resilience eventually will end in right action or productive action. It is also about not being caught up in the past. Emotional resilience gives us the courage to look at the present situation and act on it. And it is basically to build one's courage, the vulnerability, and the trust within us. We all have a tendency, to get carried away. We get carried away by our emotions, be it excitement, be it fear, be it hurts. We either try to be too positive or we get stuck in too much of worrying. We either are caught up in denial or we blow up things into bigger issues than they are. Emotional resilience brings a sense of balance, the ability to see the issue as it is and respond to it. In a work context, resilience manifests as the adaptability to change. Whether it is a change internally within us or a change of situations and the challenges that we face outside. Whether a change was expected or it is unexpected. And it also gives us a strength to see a wider perspective. Whenever we are challenged by life, by design, we would shrink and have a smaller perspective based on survival. The survival mechanism kicks in. But this practice of self-leadership and emotional resilience actually helps us to keep ourselves open and look at a bigger picture and function from that. In an interpersonal relationship context, it also helps us not only to address everything from a logical perspective, but also combine an emotional perspective. So then our solutions become more rounded and more appropriate to the existing situation. Our actions are also determined by our emotions, naturally. If we have a mastery over our emotions, then our actions are also balanced actions. Then we will not move into either of the extremes. When we function from either of the extremes, then we are either stressed out, burnt out, or we lose initiative, we are too relaxed to function and take any decisions. Right action arises from a resilient mind. And this is important for us to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. Has always been important, and today and tomorrow even more than ever. So you just mentioned the numerous benefits of emotional resilience, Rajesh. In turn, there's no doubt that the costs of lack of emotional resilience are high. Let us sit with this for a moment. Please fill our audience in on why it is costly to turn a blind eye on developing emotional resilience.
When there is no emotional resilience, we are too brittle. Our responses come from a superficial place. Then we either get stuck in action when action is needed. We get frozen. When change is needed, we will not be able to change quickly. Or we may get stuck in the opposite, which is hasty decisions and actions, trying to change everything at the same time and being impulsive around it. Both of these are manifestations of a lack of mental and emotional resilience. The next thing is a lack of choices. Since we are unaware of our emotions, we repeat our responses. We do the same thing for every challenge that we face, and we expect, as we say, a different outcome. And slowly over a period of time, as we repeat ourselves, we forget new choices. We cannot think out of the box because we don't have any emotional freedom to do that. A balanced, unhurried reflection, understanding, and action will be absent if we do not practice emotional resilience.
Agree. Yeah. Don't we all want to seize the present situation with greater clarity and flexibility? But this sounds especially difficult in the current time of increased uncertainty. So we have been going through an unprecedented health and economic crisis in the past few weeks and even months across the globe. COVID-19 has turned our world upside down. Nobody was prepared. how would the cultivation of emotional resilience have helped us better navigate through this crisis, both as individuals and as organizations? And why is it not too late to start practicing, like start building muscles?
True, true. If we had practiced emotional resilience and self-leadership, we could have weathered this storm much better. It will help us in three important aspects. The first is the ability to let go. In times of crisis, the old rules and the old views do not apply anymore. So that means we should be agile enough in our mindset, agile enough in our emotional state to move past those old views, ideas, and look at the present denominators, to the present resources that we have in our hand, and how to find suitable actions. The second thing is mastering one's emotions. Emotions are more powerful than we believe them to be. Emotions create our moods, emotions affect our thinking process, it affects the choices that we have in front of us, it also affects the way we look at ourselves and the world. So, not being stuck in our emotions will really help us to flow forward in our thinking process as well. So, mastering emotions or emotional resilience helps us to be calm and collected in this time of crisis. The third and most important is the ability to regroup, to come together and to act as a collective when it is actually essential to do so. And this doesn't come one day out of the blue. It comes with practice. For example, the emergency drills that we practice in a factory or in an aircraft, this practice actually helps us to work together in moments of crisis and to function together and work towards a common goal. So similarly, emotional resilience is a practice that we cultivate. It doesn't happen in one day. The questions we have to ask ourselves is, when we had past challenges, how did we respond together? Have we created resilient individuals, a resilient team, and a resilient organization? The presence or absence of emotional resilience will reflect in an organization's culture and values in times of crisis.
It's a nice metaphor you use in the beginning, to weather the storm and become storm-proof. The ultimate goal is that we don't just learn to survive, but also to thrive, right? So all of us are or will be affected by this crisis in one way or the other. And we all know, or at least sense, that there is, how shall we say, no way of going back to business as usual once this crisis is over. But are we really ready to reinvent ourselves? How can we get best equipped?
Now, as you say, Isabelle, business as usual is over. So it's not a question of are we ready to reinvent, but it is our prerogative to reinvent ourselves. It is quite important for us to reinvent. But firstly, we have to look at what do we learn from this crisis? What does it show? I would say it shows that we are more interrelated than we thought we were. We all knew that it was a globalized world, but such a crisis brought it out into the open, how interrelated we are. And secondly, we understand that emotions affect our economy as much as a supply chain disruption affects it. Because emotions do travel around in this world because we are interrelated. Somebody being scared somewhere in New York affects every other person around the world. And thirdly, we need to understand the importance of relationship and trust that has come to the fore. And these are times when people are scrambling to find trustful people and trustful relationships so that we can work together, so that it is possible for us to get out of this together. So, if we need to equip ourselves, I would say we need to focus on a few points. The first one is we need to question our priorities. What are my needs? What is my purpose? What is my vision? Be it an individual or as an organization. And secondly, we need to look into our values. Where are our values? How have we been functioning? And how should we function as we move forward? Should we be self-centered, or should we function encompassing others' well-being as well? Only when we function with others' well-being in our mind as well, when a moment of crisis arises, there will be someone else to respond to our troubles, and we can actually work together. Thirdly, we need to address our ability and willingness to support each other. This happens by forging strong relationships in all contexts, being an individual or as an organization. See, we live in a world of globalized economy, a globalized workforce, and even a globalized emotional response. We either survive together or we succumb together. So that is why, if we need to overcome these challenges, this present challenge, we need to get there together, and we need to get there in a responsible way.
Yeah, which ties back to the question we raised initially: how do we best develop and equip the next generation leaders? Though this will require a somewhat slightly different skill set. But the current crisis can help foster such crucial skills. When we look at the shutdown of most countries that forces many people to stay home and work from home, we human beings are social animals, and so we're not used to spend so much time at home with ourselves, our partners, our families. How can self-leadership and emotional resilience help not just survive the quarantine, but teach important lessons for life, both professionally and personally?
Yes, this is a crisis. And this is also an opportunity. Crisis and opportunity are two sides of the same coin. And this is the best opportunity for us to learn and move forward. See, learning doesn't mean just keeping ourselves busy or trying out new things. No, learning happens by being still and paying attention to what is happening outside, inside, and what is the response that is needed. So, this learning can happen only around a few parameters. So that's why the first one would be to build a structure and discipline around ourselves, around our work, around our time. This creates a sense of clarity and a sense of purpose. So when we have a structure and disciplined mind, then focus is automatic, then all unnecessary thoughts and emotions fall away, and we can function with clarity. Second one is to develop a healthy introspection. We should teach ourselves to look into ourselves, to observe ourselves. It need not be a formal meditation. It is just a few minutes to look at ourselves. What are my thoughts? What are my actions? Where do I arise from? Where am I journeying to? Just asking these fundamental questions and looking at ourselves. This way, this will help us to prioritize our needs, prioritize our actions, and focus on the immediate action that has to be taken. And that action could be to wait, or that action could be to act. And thirdly, we need to reconnect. We need to reconnect with people and relationships in our life. The outer world and the stability of the outer world as we know has been shattered, or at least it is shaky. Now, where do we find the strength and courage to fix that? And that strength and courage comes from our inner meaning, our purpose, our connections, particularly from people who care for us and people whom we care for. So, strengthening these relationships and purpose and meaning of our life brings us inner strength and courage to handle these situations and come out successful.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, Rajesh. The interconnectedness of the world has shown its weaknesses, but it has also shown and will continue to show its strength. Human connections are critical since they deeply impact us and with it have the power to change the world. Well, with such powerful words, we're approaching the end of our podcast. Thank you, Rajesh, very much for these wise thoughts and clear statements.
Thank you, Isabelle. Thank you. I agree with you completely on the interconnected nature of things. And when we recognize this interconnected nature of our behavior, of our interdependence in this world, it brings us tremendous faith. It restores faith in ourselves and it restores faith in the collective. And this faith will be the propelling force to move us forward and take us forward.
Speaking about the collective, thank you also, dear audience, for your time and your interest. We truly hope you've enjoyed embarking on this journey with us. It is important to learn to enjoy the ride towards improved self-leadership. Nope, it's not always easy or comfortable, but what it yields in personal growth is much more significant than you can conceive of. Before we close, we would like to give you an outlook on the next Self-Leadership Days. The conference will take place on October 30th and 31st, 2020 in Zurich, and it will offer a deep dive into the topic we discussed today. Build emotional resilience, transform the power of emotions into powerful actions. It would be really wonderful to have you with us in October. You wonder what you will get out of it? You will, for example, acquire a wide range of leadership level tools that will help you succeed in your leadership roles. In the meantime, we offer coaching sessions for individuals and organizations. And concurrently, we're building a platform that includes an international network of like-minded people. If you're interested, feel free to contact us at info@selfleadershipdays.com. But you can also find more information about the conference series, as well as information, publications, videos, etc. on self-leadership on our website, selfleadershipdays.com. Now, we wish you from our heart all the best, good health and a sane mind. Stay safe and take care of yourself and the people around you. Thank you and goodbye.